My sister-in-law called the police with a false report because after 2 years, I stopped babysitting her children due to my health condition, but now her situation is worse as everything falls apart. For the past 2 years, I, Arya, 33 years old woman, have been the trusted babysitter for my sister-in-law, Guinevere, 37 years old. Her children, Mia and Noah, were adorable, and despite Guinevere's arrogant attitude, I really enjoyed spending time with them. I remember when Mia was just a little girl and Noah was a newborn, I spent hours with them while Guinevere did whatever she did. I played with Mia, helped her with crafts, and even read books to Noah. It was so much fun. Although I didn't have children of my own, I grew very attached to them, but things started to change a few months ago. I was diagnosed with a chronic condition, and it affected me more than I expected. I had to drastically adjust my lifestyle. I used to be full of energy, always doing something, whether running errands or helping with family matters, but now my body couldn't keep up. I was constantly exhausted, and even the simplest tasks felt like mountains I had to climb. The doctor gave me a harsh reality check. I had to reduce physical and mental stress. At first, I tried to ignore it, hoping I could push through, but it quickly became clear that it wasn't something I could overlook. There were days when I couldn't even get out of bed without feeling completely drained. So, reluctantly, I made the decision to tell Guinevere that I could no longer babysit her children regularly. I explained everything, how my health had changed and how I needed to prioritize myself. I wasn't asking for pity, just understanding. But instead of responding like any normal person would, Guinevere was furious. The exact words she said were, "What do you do all day?" I wasn't just lounging around all day, I was dealing with constant pain and exhaustion that she couldn't understand, and there she was, implying that I was simply being lazy. She continued saying that taking care of her kids wasn't a hard job and that I was being selfish for not helping. I tried to explain again, but talking to a brick wall wasn't exactly my idea of spending the day. No matter what I said, she was convinced I was exaggerating. I couldn't keep arguing with her, so I decided to stop responding and hoped she would let it go. But of course, she didn't. Every few days, she would send me messages asking when I was going to start babysitting again, or telling me how much she needed help. It felt like she was emotionally manipulating me into giving in. At first, I stood my ground and stuck to my decision. I was genuinely concerned about my health and knew I needed to listen to my body. But after a couple of weeks, I started feeling an overwhelming guilt. I kept thinking about Mia and Noah. Despite their awful mother, I liked them and I missed them. It made me question if maybe I was overreacting about my condition. Maybe I could still help a little, even if not as much as before. But then I'd remember how my body felt when I pushed myself, and that thought would bring me back to the reality of the situation. I didn't want to end up in a worse condition just because I felt guilty. In the end, Guinevere didn't respond as I had hoped. She didn't apologize or even acknowledge how my health was affecting me. Instead, she stayed angry for a few weeks. I didn't hear much from her, aside from the occasional passive-aggressive comment. A month later, my husband and I were invited to a family dinner at my in-laws' house. Honestly, I had mixed feelings about going. I hadn't seen Guinevere since our last argument, and I didn't know how that would go, but I got along well with the rest of the family and didn't want to cause more issues, so I agreed to go. I hoped things would be civil and that maybe, just maybe, Guinevere had taken some time to reflect on her behavior. Of course, that didn't happen. The moment we walked in, I could feel the tension in the air. Guinevere wasted no time making me the center of attention in the worst way possible. She greeted us with that smug smile she always wore, the one that made me feel like she was already plotting something. As we sat at the table, everyone was chatting, catching up, and generally having a good time. It seemed like it would be a normal family dinner until Guinevere decided to speak. "So, Arya," she said loudly, "are you still too sick to help with my kids, or is that just an excuse because you're too lazy to get off the couch?" The room fell silent because everyone wanted to hear this. I'm not someone who likes making a scene, but that comment could bring out the worst in anyone, and I hadn't told the other family members about my condition. "You already know about my condition, Guinevere," I said. "It's not an excuse. I'm just trying to take care of my health." She didn't even blink. Instead, she smirked and said, "Health? Maybe watching the kids would do you some good. It would get you out of your self-pity spiral." She laughed like she had just told the funniest joke in the world, while the rest of the table exchanged uncomfortable glances. Then, the other family members started asking me what had happened, and I had to explain everything. I was furious, but I didn't want things to escalate, especially in front of my in-laws. I knew I had to keep my composure, but inside, I was boiling. I wanted to say so many things, that she had no idea what I was going through, that her lack of empathy was unbelievable. Thankfully, my husband wasn't willing to tolerate any of it. He stepped in to defend me before I could say a word. "That's enough, Guinevere," he said. "You can't talk to Arya like that. She's been through a lot and you need to respect her boundaries." But even with his support, I felt like the damage was already done. Guinevere wasn't someone who gave up easily, and it didn't take long before she started with more passive-aggressive comments. "I just don't get it," she said, looking directly at me. "It's not like I'm asking you to do something difficult. Watching the kids is just keeping an eye on them for a few hours. I don't see what the problem is." Everyone else at the table kept their eyes on their food, hoping the conversation would end. But it didn't. Guinevere kept pushing. "Maybe if you actually helped, you wouldn't be so tired all the time." At that point, I was already exhausted. I was about to explode, but I didn't want to cause a scene, so I just took a deep breath, forced a smile, and said, "Guinevere, I already told you I can't babysit regularly right now. If you don't understand that, then maybe we should just drop it." She didn't say anything after that, but she gave me a strange look. I tried to push those thoughts aside and focus on the fact that I had stood up for myself, but it was hard not to feel bad about Guinevere's complete lack of consideration for what I was going through. The rest of the night was as uncomfortable as you'd imagine. Guinevere kept her distance, but it wasn't as if everything before had just disappeared. Her bitterness didn't end there. Oh no, it got so much worse. A few days after the family dinner, I was at home, trying to relax after another exhausting day, when someone knocked on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so when I opened it, I was shocked to see a police officer standing there. I was completely stunned as the officer explained he was there to follow up on a theft report. Apparently, Guinevere had filed a complaint saying I had stolen money from her house. At first, I couldn't even process what I was hearing. I immediately called Guinevere to try and get answers, my hands shaking as I brought the phone to my ear and my heart pounding in my chest. The phone rang for a few seconds before she answered. "Guinevere," I said, "what is going on? Why are the police at my door? Why would you accuse me of stealing from you?" She wasted no time throwing insults at me. "You think you can just stop babysitting my kids and get away with it? Maybe this will teach you not to mess with me. I'm not going to let you get away with this." This woman had really gone this far just to make my life miserable. The accusation was absurd, and I couldn't believe I was even having this conversation. But for her, it wasn't about logic or reason, it was revenge. She seemed willing to do whatever it took to punish me for setting boundaries and standing up for myself. I tried to stay calm, but I could feel my anger rising. I put the call on speaker so the officer could hear and said, "Guinevere, I didn't steal anything from you. This is crazy. Why would you make something like this up?" But she just laughed, almost as if she enjoyed seeing me upset. "I'm not going to talk to you about this anymore," she said before hanging up. I stood there, completely dumbfounded, staring at my phone. How could someone be so petty and malicious? I didn't know how to process what had just happened. Although she didn't say anything directly incriminating when I put her on speaker, and she ended the call shortly after, luckily. The police officer could tell something wasn't right. After a brief conversation, he was already starting to see through her story. I guess I was an easy target for her, but I had no motive, no opportunity, and certainly no history of anything like that. I had been home all day when the money supposedly disappeared, and I had a solid alibi. The officer even checked our security camera footage, which confirmed my whereabouts. It didn't take long before everything fell apart. The officer was polite and professional, apologizing for the inconvenience and assuring me that everything had been cleared up. But what she had done couldn't simply be undone. Guinevere had tried to drag my name through the mud. Even though I wasn't in trouble, I still felt shaken by the whole ordeal. Guinevere's plan had failed in the most spectacular way. Once her husband, Mark, found out about the police report and what Guinevere had done, he was furious. I had never seen him so angry before. He had always been the calm and patient one in their relationship, but this was the final straw. From what I understood, he hadn't been happy with her behavior lately, but the false theft accusation seemed to be his breaking point. It was like something inside him snapped. Mark went straight to her and demanded that she apologize to me. But of course, Guinevere refused. She was too proud, too stubborn, and frankly, too self-absorbed to admit she had done anything wrong. I found out about all of this when Mark came to my house to apologize on her behalf. To be honest, I wasn't thrilled about being caught in the middle of their drama. It felt strange, but at the same time, part of me felt vindicated. She had tried to ruin my life with her lies, and now the consequences were catching up to her. I couldn't help but feel a little satisfaction knowing that things were falling apart for her. The worst part for Guinevere, however, came when news of the police report reached the school where she worked. Guinevere had been a teacher for years, and I guess she had always thought her position was secure. But once the school found out about the false theft accusation and the involvement of the police, things started to unravel for her in a major way. I couldn't help but feel a little guilty about how much I was enjoying watching everything fall apart. I mean, I know it's not nice to take pleasure in someone else's downfall, but after everything she put me through, it almost felt deserved. It was like the universe was finally giving her a taste of her own medicine. For so long, she had walked through life with an inflated sense of entitlement, acting as if the world revolved around her, and now, it was all crumbling down. Of course, none of this came without consequences for me. I started to feel bad for the people in our family who were caught in the middle, trying to decide whose side to take. There were some family members who felt sorry for her, thinking it wasn't fair for her job to be affected. But, for the most part, people were on my side. Still, there were those awkward moments at family gatherings where I had to pretend nothing was happening, even though things had become incredibly tense. Now that Guinevere's life has completely fallen apart, she seems to be trying to blame me for everything. During yet another one of our family arguments, she lost control, pointing her finger at me and yelling that I was the reason everything had gone wrong. She screamed that if I had just been the babysitter for her kids for a few hours, none of this would have happened. But by now, I had learned to stay calm. I didn't engage in a shouting match. Instead, I responded calmly, "Guinevere, I didn't force you to mock me at dinner, and I didn't force you to file a false police report. You did this to yourself. The truth is, I never wanted to be in the middle of this drama in the first place. I just asked for some space to focus on my health and well-being." But Guinevere took that request as a personal attack. Everything that followed, her accusations, her lies, her attempts to ruin my reputation, was all her doing. I wasn't the one who escalated things, but I certainly wasn't going to be the one to back down. The only thing I regret, if you can even call it that, is the impact this has had on her children. Mia and Noah were innocent in all of this, and I have always loved them as if they were my own. I still hope they grow up to be kinder and more understanding than their mother. I don't want them to inherit her bitterness and toxicity. However, this isn't over yet. Guinevere is now facing serious trouble for filing that false police report. Honestly, I didn't think she would actually be held accountable. But apparently, she's being investigated for making a false claim, and it looks like she may have to pay a fine or face some kind of penalty. Frankly, it couldn't have happened to a more deserving person. I don't know exactly what the legal consequences will be for her, but it seems like she'll have to deal with them one way or another. And of course, now that the walls are closing in on her, she still refuses to take responsibility for her actions. In a move I can only describe as completely disconnected from reality, Guinevere has started calling me. She's telling me that I should be the one to help her pay the fine. Yes, you read that correctly. She wants me to cover the cost of the mess she created. It's not going to happen. It's so ridiculous that as I write this, I'm shaking my head and laughing just thinking about it. She has no right to ask me for anything after the way she treated me. Although she has also tried to manipulate me by using her kids to make me feel sorry for her. She says that if she has to pay a fine, her poor children won't get presents this Christmas, which makes the whole thing even worse. Because not only has she created all this drama, but now she also wants to punish her kids for it. Update 1. I know some of you have questions about my condition. I just want to say up front that I don't feel comfortable sharing too many details about it here. I hope you understand. But what I can say is that it makes me feel physically exhausted very easily. It's something I'm still adjusting to, and it has been a challenge. I'm learning to pace myself, but it's not always easy to explain, especially when it comes to other people's expectations. Some of you also asked how I ended up taking care of Guinevere's kids, so I thought I'd share a little about that to give some context. A few years ago, I lost my job. It was a pretty tough time for me, to be honest. I had been working in a demanding role, the kind of job that left me drained more times than I'd like to admit. After losing that job, I found myself at a crossroads, wondering what I was going to do next. I didn't want to rush into taking another full-time position that would be just as stressful, so I decided to take some time to clear my head. During that period, I found a remote part-time job that turned out to be a real blessing. It's flexible, pays enough, and allows me to work from home, giving me more control over my schedule. Honestly, it has been a great balance, and I've made it work, even though it's only part-time. My husband also has a good job, which helps, and together we've been able to remain financially comfortable. So things have worked out well, even though this wasn't the career path I expected to take. Since I was working from home and had more free time, I started looking for ways to fill my days. That's when I ended up taking care of Guinevere's children. You see, Guinevere and I haven't always had a bad relationship, but let's just say it has had its ups and downs. She's not the easiest person to deal with, but when I lost my job, I found myself with a lot of free time and thought maybe I could help with her kids. It all started when she had to go on a trip with her friends and her usual nanny canceled at the last minute. She asked me if I could help, and even though I wasn't sure if it was a good idea, I agreed. I thought it would be temporary, but over time it became something like my second job. She kept asking me to watch the kids, even when she wasn't traveling. Her children, Mia and Noah, are adorable, and I genuinely enjoyed spending time with them. So it's not like I hated it, but that's where things started to get complicated. What started as a favor soon turned into something that felt like an obligation. Guinevere began to rely on me more and more, and before I knew it, I was regularly taking care of the kids. At first, I didn't mind, but after a while, I felt like I was doing it more for her convenience than out of a genuine desire to help. It didn't take long before I was trying to balance my part-time job with watching her children. That was fine when I was healthy, but when my condition started to worsen, I felt like I was pushing myself too hard. Looking back, I can't help but wonder if I should have set boundaries earlier. I think I wanted to be the kind and helpful family member who could handle everything, but in the end, it only led to burnout. The truth is, it's okay to say no. It's okay to take care of yourself and put your needs first, even when someone else is demanding your time and energy. Update 2. I know it's been a while, but I finally have some news. First of all, I want to thank everyone who supported me through that crazy situation with Guinevere. It's good to have people on your side when you're dealing with someone as delusional as my sister-in-law. So here's where things stand. Guinevere ended up paying a fine for filing that false police report, which honestly, I didn't expect to happen so quickly. She was also warned that if something like this happened again, she could face more serious consequences. To be fair, I'm glad she had to face some kind of repercussion for the mess she caused. It felt like justice. But at the same time, it's not like I'm celebrating it. I think Guinevere would rather pretend nothing happened and move on, but that's not how this works, right? The most surprising update, however, has to do with Guinevere and Mark. They are now separated. That has been a huge shock for the family. Honestly, I never thought they would reach this point, but clearly, they hit a breaking point. Mark was furious when he found out everything Guinevere had done, especially the false report. That was the last straw for him, and it wasn't long before they started living apart. From what I know, they are working on their relationship. They are in therapy, and it seems like Mark wants to try to fix things. I don't know what will happen to them in the long run, but I guess there's still a chance they can work things out if they're both willing to put in the effort. Right now, I've distanced myself from their drama. It's hard to care when you've been dragged into a situation where you were falsely accused of something you didn't do. As for Guinevere, she still blames me for everything that happened. She refuses to talk to me, which at this point is honestly a relief. I don't think I could handle any more of her toxicity. There's a limit to what a person can endure before they have to protect their own peace, and right now, I'm doing what I can to focus on my health and happiness. I've learned the hard way that just because someone is family doesn't mean they have your best interests at heart. Some people will manipulate and take advantage of you, no matter how much you try to help them. At some point, you have to draw a line. What's been a bit harder to deal with is not being able to see Mia and Noah. I miss those kids. They were a big part of my life for a while, and even though things were complicated with Guinevere, I really enjoyed spending time with them. They're smart, sweet kids, and it feels strange not to be a part of their lives now. I know they probably miss me too, but I don't know if I'll ever get the chance to see them again. Guinevere has made it clear that she wants nothing to do with me, and I don't want to cross any boundaries. As for those wondering about my husband and in-laws' role in all of this, I haven't mentioned them much because my husband values his privacy and didn't want me to include him. I've changed some names, but he doesn't want any friends or co-workers recognizing him. He has allowed me to share this because many people have asked. My husband has tried talking to Guinevere, but he hasn't been able to calm her down, so to speak. Right now, he's not speaking to her and only communicates with his brother-in-law, Mark. The same goes for my in-laws, who have supported me since the day they learned about my condition. But since they're not extremely relevant to the story, I've left them out because the issue here is between my sister-in-law and me. Besides, it would take too long to explain everyone's reactions one by one. Update 3. I know it's been about a month since my last update, but I finally have some news for you. Thank you again to everyone who has reached out in comments or private messages. Let's start with Guinevere and Mark. Believe it or not, they're back together. Yes, I was a little surprised too, considering everything that happened. After all the drama, accusations, and everything else, I thought that would be the end of their relationship, but somehow, they managed to work things out. It's a bit bittersweet for me. On one hand, I'm glad they're finding a way to move forward. On the other hand, I still haven't been able to see Mia and Noah. Honestly, I miss those kids so much, but with everything that happened, I just can't find a way back into their lives. Update 4. I think I'm in a good place to give another update. Sorry for not updating sooner. My health wasn't great, not even to sit down and write on my computer. Luckily, I've improved a lot. I've been seeing a new doctor and switched to a keto diet, which has helped me a lot. I wouldn't say I feel 100% healthy, but at least I can live a relatively normal life. The illness is chronic, and for now, there is no definitive cure, only palliative measures. I'm sharing all this to respond to those who were concerned about my health last time, and also to help anyone going through something similar. Guinevere and Mark are finally in the process of getting a divorce. The issue my sister-in-law had with me wasn't the only thing that led to their separation, but I don't know what has happened recently or if it was a combination of things. Maybe they tried to fix their marriage and it just didn't work. For me, it's not hard to imagine that being in a relationship with Guinevere can be very complicated. Mark and my husband have been talking a lot lately, and my husband told him how much I miss my niece and nephew. So Mark has been bringing them over from time to time, but he never leaves them completely in my care. He stays with them so that I don't have to make any effort, which speaks very well of him as a person. As for my husband, he still isn't speaking to Guinevere because he's waiting for her to apologize to me. In my case, I no longer expect an apology from her. My in-laws, however, have started talking to her because, in the end, she is their daughter, although their relationship is still not very good. They continue to support me and have been a great help with my condition. So that's all I can share for now.